Welcome back. I'm still reading the notebook on King Rhineref, and I'm just reading the footnotes. It should be noted that the 18 major guilds of Dunny were not necessarily the same as the 18 that had existed on Garternay. In fact, they were probably much different. Though there is no information that details the major guilds of Garternay, we do know that the guilds were meant to be flexible and serve the people in the needs of their time. Taken from a transcript of Rhineref's speech on the first day of the Circle. The prophetical work the Regeltevok of Urpa, a book of Rhineref believed strongly in, dealt with numerous prophecies of a great king who would be sent by Yavo to guide the people. I think that is actually the book that all the quotes about the ages we've been visiting came from, that we found in the book on our bookshelf in the library on Relto. Okay, the next king in chronological order was Ailesh, and we can find his notebook here. Not all of the kings actually have a notebook here, because that would be quite a lot. There's only 8 of them in total. King Ailesh. Ailesh took the throne in coronation ceremonies in the year 120 DE at the age of 170. Though it seems Ailesh had never been a member of the Writers' Guild on Garternay, he had spent the first 50 years of his life with Rhineref, after his own dismissal, working on the Book of Dunny. When the Dunny Writers' Guild was formed in the year 8 DE, Rhineref made sure Ailesh was placed in charge as the first Grand Master of the Guild. As Grand Master, he had worked closely with Rhineref in the writing of the new Guild of Writers' Oath. The oath, which was what every member promised to live by, ended up staying in existence with a few minor changes until 9400 DE. Records indicate that Ailesh modeled his life very closely to Rhineref's. He refused to build himself a palace until a common library was opened, as he strongly supported a place where all citizens could have access to books. Though there was some minor disagreement on minor issues, the building was eventually finished in 233 DE. Although, like his mentor, Ailesh still refused to build himself a palace. The reign of Ailesh was extremely similar to that of Rhineref. There was still great excitement for the new ideals and laws of Dunny, and thus great support for Ailesh, making his reign a very smooth one. Before his third son was born in 256 DE, records indicated there was a bit of public apprehension over who the next king would be. Ailesh's 2 eldest sons were fairly rebellious and neither seemed good candidates for the throne, at least in the public's opinion. However, as Ailesh's third son grew, it became apparent to the public, although records never give specific reasons, that the boy closely followed his father's ideals. Ailesh must have agreed with public opinion, as it was his third son who he selected to succeed him. Ailesh died of natural causes at the age of 350. Okay. The next king was Shomat, whom we've read about before in the notebook we found in Either Chemo. He's the one who made all the Garden Ages. King Shomat. Shomat took the throne in the year 300 DE, Dunny era, at the age of 44. Up to the point of his coronation, he had been a member of the Guild of Writers. He continued his study of the art through private mentors for a number of years after his coronation. It was a lack of proper guild instruction that most Dunny historians attribute the distorted views Shomat later took on. It was an up-and-down reign, partly due to tremendous tension that seemed to exist between himself and his older brothers. Both of the brothers, though they had little respect, did everything in their power to make Shomat's reign tumultuous. One of the first actions Shomat ordered was the construction of a palace. When it was completed in 347 DE, Shomat moved in with his family, although his brothers refused, and maintained their own homes. Such an act was regarded as tremendous disrespect to a family and only served to widen the gap between Shomat and his brothers. Furthering tensions not only within Shomat's family, but within the culture as well as the lavishness of the palace. Ornate gardens were present inside the physical grounds, and garden ages were written as well, linking from within the palace. Rumors abounded that some of these garden ages were even wiped of their inhabitants in order to provide Shomat with relaxation. Whether true or not, Shomat often spoke publicly of the need for his ages to serve Dunny. This was a first for the society and a direct contradiction to what the guilds taught, that Dunny were to serve the ages. It seems that eventually the tension became too much. Some say it drove Shomat mad. In 387 DE, both his brothers disappeared and were never found again. It was commonly presumed that Shomat wrote a death book to which both of his brothers were linked into, although it could never be proven. Regardless, it was one of the first major challenges for the people of Dani, and they reacted quickly. A prophetess was supplied to Shomat in 400 DE in an attempt to guide him in the ways of Yavo. For the 155 remaining years of his reign, it seems that most people believed Shomat became a better king. The prophetess became an excellent mentor for Shomat and eventually convinced him to choose the son of one of his close friends as the heir to the throne. His own children were admittedly out of control. As it turns out, it was the bloodline of that child that led to the birth of the Great King years later. Shomat died of natural causes at the age of 299. More footnotes. Women were generally seen as much better communicators with Yavo than men. As a result, most prophets were women. The choosing of a prophetess as guides for the kings started with Shomat and became tradition for all the remaining kings of Dani. It was usually up to the king as to which prophet or prophetess would seek for wisdom. Okay, now there's a big gap, because the next notebook is about King Negan, which is this one, who ruled considerably later than Shomat. King Negan took the throne in 2356 DE at the age of 86. Negan did much to encourage the growth of the major guild of fine artists, as well as the seeking of the other truths. The year 2500 DE, 1000 years after the death of the Great King, would mark the peak of what some would call the religious confusion. There were over 2000 religious sects, and the original beliefs of Rhinaref were known by very few. Negan was clearly not one of them. It is 2397 DE that most officially marks the start of the Dani Renaissance in that year. The Amos Theatre Company hosted the first play written by the playwright Sirah. The play dealt with the Pento War and the Great King himself, and was one which Negan praised. It ended up being sold out for 3 straight weeks, and marked not only the start of theatre as a popular entertainment source within the culture, but also the beginning of the Pento War subject, which would go on to become one of the most dealt with topics in their history of their art. In 2408 DE, the 33-year-old musician Aram began selling out concert halls, marking the beginning of yet another career of one of the great Dani artists. His music also dealt much with the Great King, many times ridiculing him. Negan praised his people for being able to express their true feelings in such wonderful displays of art. In 2488 DE, the first successful extrusion tests were carried out by the Guild of Miners, and to great applause from the public, Negan used the occasion to benefit everyone. He appointed the Guild of Miners as a major guild, replacing the Guild of Fine Artists. He then split the Guild of Fine Artists up into the minor guilds of sculptors, artists, actors, and musicians. The split was to encourage growth in mining as well as the arts, 2 major causes of Negan throughout his reign. His proposal was strongly supported by Sirah and Aram, as well as other artists, who viewed it as an excellent opportunity for the growth of their respective fields. In 2500 DE, Negan proposed the construction of a new council chamber for the guilds. Somewhat surprising was that he suggested it should be built over the tomb of the Great King. The proposal was met with little opposition, and construction began 2 years later. In 2502 DE, the tomb of the Great King was barely visible, a tremendous symbol of what Dani had become. Later it was discovered that within the council chamber was a massive vault, protected by puzzles of a sort. The tomb had always been known for its patterns, some of which were claimed to have prophetic messages. Negan apparently became enamored with the patterns and spread them throughout the unseen portions of the chamber, as well as the scene. Though the public knew very little of the vault at the time of construction, years later it was found to contain a tremendous amount of royal wealth, something Negan often publicly encouraged. Of course, most were not able to save the amounts Negan did, but still the idea of saving one's money for future generations was strongly encouraged by him. Negan died in 2533 DE at the age of 263, leaving the throne to his third son. In memorial to Negan, Sirah wrote another of the more popular of his plays, entitled Our Great King. It was the first play performed by the Minor Guild of Actors in 2535 DE. Some more footnotes, taken from the Journal of Tevar in 3075, from a speech by Negan christening the Minor Guild of Musicians. Though the official church registered a complaint, it seems like there was little heart behind it. Apparently, even a prophetess of Negan supported the proposition. Negan actually ties into the age of Kadish Talisa, because Yisha mentioned that Kadish stockpiled his wealth because he listened to the teachings of King Nagash. Negan, actually. Okay, the next king is Dimef, but I will read that one in the next video.